Hey friends, it's Daniel. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences between the Teenage Engineering OP-1 and the Elektron Digitakt, mostly in the context in which I tend to use them from a compositional writing and recording perspective, because that's the perspective I have to offer. They're both really great instruments, and I would not want to give up either of these machines, but hopefully if you're interested in one or both of them, it will kind of give you a bit of a better idea which one may be more appropriate for your needs. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of a breakdown between the two devices. To start, we're going to take a look at the Teenage Engineering OP-1. So this is a polyphonic synth, drum machine, sequencer, and sampler. It has 4 tape tracks, digital tape tracks, that you can infinitely overdub and write and record over, set levels individually. And this is the primary method of recording and writing on this instrument. So you can play things in real time, you get a metronome, but you're playing to a digital tape track. And now we have the Elektron Digitakt. This is an 8-voice drum machine, sequencer, and sampler. It is, it's a sampler primarily, so it doesn't have any instruments built into it. You need to buy or create or record your own samples to get a sound out of it. It does have stock samples on it, and they're really good. They're high quality. I use a lot of them, but you're gonna wanna kind of make your own samples or buy other samples that fit the vibe of the type of music you want to give you some variance, because you know they're stock sounds and they're gonna be limited by nature. But the primary difference between the Digitakt and the OP-1 is that the Digitakt is sequencing based. So everything is aligned to a grid. You can play notes live into a sequence and they will be unquantized if you set it as such, but they're still snapped to what's called a micro-timed step, so it's still all relative to the grid, whereas the OP-1, you're kind of just recording to that tape reel. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of my personal use of each of these instruments. The OP-1 I've had for almost 3 years. A lot of people say that it's primarily used as like a sketchbook, you know, to put down a melody, play something in really quick, record a beat while you're on the road, and bring that back to your digital audio workstation to kind of refine. I think that that's massively underselling it. I think it's a great instrument to record audio and actually do some primary mixing on for any kind of project. My full-length album Dandelion was, I would say, 80 to 90% recorded onto the OP-1. I took the recordings that I did in the tape reel and I did live performances of them, put those in Logic, and then added some EQ, did some compression limiting, all that kind of important stuff that you want to do for like a professional recording, and I had them mastered. I did a few overdubs with some bass and some drum sounds and field recordings, but like I said, most of it was done right on the OP-1. And I'm gonna link that album, Dandelion, in the description of this video so you can kind of listen for yourself to see what the capabilities of the machine are. The OP-1 it's quick, it's portable, it's super accessible, it's easy to learn and understand if you just spend a little bit of time reading the manual, watching tutorials. There are so many great resources on the internet, on YouTube, on Reddit to learn this device. So if it seems intimidating, don't worry, it's really not. You just gotta, put a couple of hours into studying up. So in terms of my usage, I think the Digitakt is a bit more of a workhorse synth. That's kind of a loaded, vague word, but I'll try to explain it as best as I can. So it's purely sequence-based, as I mentioned. I wouldn't necessarily play it as an instrument the way with the OP-1. I wouldn't bring it to a gig and have a bass synth preset or like a pad that I would play on it. You can set the pads to play in a scale, but it's only monophonic per each of the 8 voices, so you can't play more than one note at a time. The sound design on the Digitakt is incredibly robust. You can take each step of a sequence and change virtually any parameter of that sound that you want. So it's a really focused machine. You have to really take the time to refine the sounds that you want to get them how you want to be in the final product. I tend to use a more focused sound palette, a more intentional sound palette on the Digitakt when I'm setting up projects, because you are limited to those 8 sounds. I mean, you can change them within an individual step of a track, but it takes kind of a lot of energy to go through and do that for every step of a song if you really want to use that many sounds. So I tend to treat each of the 8 tracks like its own instrument. Compositionally, I'm very intentional with it. Whereas the OP-1, because you can do infinite overdubs on those tape tracks, you can put in little textures anywhere any split second can have like a little, percussive element or a splash of reverb on a string part or anything like that. So the OP-1 is a little bit limitless in terms of what you want to put into a track. And the Digitakt is limiting, but you don't get that option paralysis that you might with the OP-1. I think the OP-1 is better for kind of painting with more broad strokes, if that makes sense. You have a blank canvas that you can throw anything on, and as long as you save each tape track as you go, you're not going to ruin your track when you overdub. The Digitakt, on the other hand, is a step-based sequencer, so it's really easy to undo and redo things if you mess up. You can go into any part of a step sequence and just clear out notes if you don't like them. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes and show you contextually some of the things I've been talking about for each specific instrument in the context of tracks that I've created, and kind of reverse engineer them for you and show you part of that creative process with each instrument. Okay, we're going to go from the kitchen to the studio. Okay, so to demonstrate some of, I guess, the portability and immediacy of the OP-1, I wanted to demonstrate with kind of an anecdote. So a couple of years ago, I was at a songwriting session with my friend, the bassist for my band at the time. His name's Adam, and Adam was just kind of playing around on his acoustic guitar while we were taking a songwriting break, and he played this little riff that I really liked, and I had my OP-1 with me just in case. I brought it with me in case something cool happened, and I recorded the riff he played, and it sounded like this. And he played it through a couple of times, and I looped it onto the OP-1 and played it back to him and said, all right, play something else on top of that. Like, I don't know, like you're building up a loop or something. So there's going to be some other instrumentation on this particular track on tape track 2. But the electric guitar part that he plays, he overdubbed. And we decided that it would be cool if he plugged in his Strat into his amp. And I just kind of recorded, this is all on the OP-1 mic, the acoustic guitar right into the OP-1 mic, and same with the Strat through the amp. And this is the second part he came up with. And you can hear the percussion and keys I added over it, but here's it together with the first part. So then I took that home with me the same night. It was a Sunday night, and I programmed some percussion in over top. Pretty simple, very reverbed out. Kind of acoustic based, but electronic sounding clicks and clacks. And you can hear, I programmed this in just finger drumming. I didn't align it to a grid. I didn't use the sequencer. But on top of those guitar parts, it gives it such a natural feel. And the percussion has such a crispness to it that I love so much about the OP-1. And then I think I played a synth part. Some more percussion too, but I used one of the synth engines native to the OP-1 and one of the electric keyboards. All right, that's super wonky, but and that became a song, actually the first single, or the second single, oops, sorry, Candle, the second single off of my album Dandelion, and I'll link to that song in the description. Granted, I took that to Logic Pro, and I added some compression, limiting, EQ, and I overdubbed a big meaty kick drum to kind of add some boominess, and I had it mastered, but 90% came from the OP-1 and it was developed so in the moment. And if I didn't bring my OP-1 with me that day, that song wouldn't have happened. And that song kind of, it helped to inspire the record Dandelion for me. So it was kind of a very meaningful moment and an attestation to how amazing of a little device this can be. Okay, and here we are at the other side of my desk with the Digitakt and a different candle and our bird friend. So I'm going to just bring you through a bit of a jam that kind of showcases different ways to manipulate a sample. The sample comes in at the second pattern, so there's a bit of a build up. Just hang out and listen for a bit, and then we'll talk about how the sample came to be and how I ended up manipulating it for some of the different patterns. I think that's what the Digitakt really excels at. So that's what I'm going to focus on here, is that sample manipulation component. All right. Bouncing melody is the sample in question. And it's a guitar sample. It's a single guitar chord being strummed. Okay, so that was the little jam, and here, oops, what am I doing? Get out of my mute modes. Okay, sorry about that. Here is our sample. You can see the waveform. It's just a single guitar chord. I believe that was played on my telly through my Princeton Reverb, recorded through the SM7B, right into the Digitakt. Super noisy. I am using the Caroline Guitar Company Meteor for reverb, and also the Maris Mercury 7 for another reverb, my two favorite reverb pedals ever. And I have the Chase Bliss Audio Warped Vinyl Hi-Fi. Yeah, so those are the three pedals I was using. I think I actually have the Chase Bliss Brothers on, and the Walrus Audio Deep 6 compressor too. Single chord. So the first pattern, it actually doesn't incorporate that chord at all. The second pattern incorporates it as such. And you can see the start point is being parameter locked. The sample start point and the direction. There's also a ton of delay and some filtering. So I can bring you through each note, right? So those delays are overlapping from those first two notes into the third. So even though the pattern goes dun, 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 you get like a da, 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 da pattern because the delay is timed to the tempo. So then on the second page, you have a similar thing going on. So on the third page, the timing's a bit different for syncopation. And then on the last page, you have it starts at the beginning of the sample instead of in the middle of the sample, so you get those strummed string transients from the guitar, which I absolutely love. So again, this part of this pattern sounds like this. Okay, on to the third pattern. And here's the guitar part for the third pattern. So it's basically the same thing as the second pattern, right? Except you can see the filter envelope. This is the second pattern. Here's the filter envelope. It's high passed. And on the third pattern, there's a low pass filter with much higher resonant peak, and the envelope filter is set differently. So here you can look at the envelope, the actual filter, the envelope of the envelope. It's confusing. And the frequency curve. So that's pattern 2, that's pattern 3, pattern 2, pattern 3. So that's kind of like the bridge, right? So it's a bit more subdued. Pattern 4, it sounds like this. So not unlike pattern 2. And if you notice the bass synth part is the same in patterns 1 and 3 and in patterns 2 and 4. So it's kind of just like an A-B chord progression with slight variations to the rhythm, the texture of that guitar sample. Here's our trusty guitar sample. And yeah, this was one of the first things I made with the guitar sample on the Digitakt, and it was so much fun to really get into it. But you really, really have to bury your head into the device to get, I think, to get that kind of variance and to discover that type of result via sample manipulation. So I think it does require a bit more focus than the OP-1. The OP-1 is more immediate, it's a bit more spontaneous, but the Digitakt it's more like trying to solve a puzzle, where the OP-1 is kind of just painting a picture. So yeah, that's that. So who is each of these instruments for then? To be completely honest, I think anybody could get along with either of them. They're both so user-friendly, with a little bit of elbow grease in the learning department. If you just put your head in a manual for a few hours, you'll be able to come out on top and start mastering each device pretty easily. I would say that if your primary concern is creating on the go, you're going to want to grab the OP-1. You can bring it anywhere. The battery lasts forever. If you want to be able to get down ideas and use it as a sketchpad, by all means do, but also don't forget that it has way more power than that. It also has a lot more built-in sounds and synth engines that you can kind of tweak. Some people say they might sound a little bit lo-fi or tinny, but to be completely honest, there are a lot of built-in effects that you can kind of beef them up with if you have any concerns about that. And I would not hesitate to grab the Digitakt if you really like sequencing, if you like sample-based workflow, because you need samples to make the Digitakt work. That's the heart of it. And if you're okay with it being more of a fixed studio piece. I mean, it's portable, it's not big, it's actually pretty small, but you need power, you need a power cable. I think some people use battery packs with it, but I haven't tried that. I've been wanting to. Maybe I'll go to the lake or the woods and see what I can come up with in nature. And again, importantly, the examples that I'm showing you and talking about are really only slivers of my personal experience. So if you have someone that you're close with that has either of these devices. See if you can borrow it or at least mess around for a couple of hours. Try to jump into the manuals online, watch tutorials. There are so many great resources, and see what kind of stuff you start coming up with in your head that you might want to create on either of these devices. I think for me, I'm personally a little bit more enamored with the Digitakt right now. I just got it a few months ago as a birthday present to myself. So I've been working almost exclusively on the Digitakt for the past 3 months or so, and I'm obsessed with it. I can really focus on creating and crafting a very specific type of tune, depending on what my mood is and what type of sample batches I'm working with. That said, I did create an entire album on the OP-1, and that album means a lot to me. It was my first solo electronic release, and I have another album coming out soon, and about 50% of it was recorded in the same manner on the OP-1, so that's really important to me too. I think they're both incredibly dynamic, powerful, and versatile tools, and in the right hands, either would be a fantastic addition for a kind of beginner to intermediate hardware synth enthusiast, or even a beginner if you know you really, really want to commit to learning a new device and you do your research ahead of time. All right, friends, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope this was interesting or entertaining, or that you learned something at the very least. And yeah, let me know if you plan on picking up one of these two devices, or I hope to inspire a decision. Please let me know which one. If you have any other questions about either of the devices, I'd be super happy to chat with you about it down in the comments below. All right, take it easy.